mergulho em águas profundas. Vamos embarcar numa longa jornada pela cultura dos oceanos. O Fronteiras do Pensamento apresenta a primeira parte da conferência, Mares Sustentáveis, a Visão e a Realidade, com Sylvia Earle. No programa de hoje, a oceanóloga e ambientalista nos leva às profundezas dos mares e do pensamento. Exploradora oceânica residente do National Geographic, a Dama das Profundezas apresenta as fascinantes curiosidades deste mundo azul. Oceanos. Como se relacionam com a vida e a cultura? Que formas de vida podemos encontrar e como podemos contribuir para uma relação sustentável entre humanos e o mar? Com vocês, Sylvia Earle.
It is a great honor for me to be here in your country, blessed with so many natural benefits on the land and in the sea. I hope someday I will have an opportunity to come and explore with you that other Brazil, the part that is out there beyond the shore, extending 200 miles into the sea, mostly unknown, mostly unexplored, like most of the rest of the ocean of the world. We have only seen so far about 5% of the ocean, and most of that near the surface. The average depth of the ocean is about 4 kilometers, about the depth where the Titanic rests. But the maximum, 11 kilometers. Well, only 2 people have ever been there and come back. It's only the round trips that count. I hope in our lifetime, my lifetime, that this will not be so unusual. There certainly is technology that will make such expeditions possible, but we have failed to apply them. We have invested deeply in what will take us high in the sky during the last century and now, and it has benefited us enormously. But we've neglected the ocean, and it's costing us dearly. So in the time that I have to share with you tonight, there are 3 things that I will come back to time and again. Number 1, to focus on how this time, this point in history, this moment at the beginning of the 21st century is perhaps the most important time in all of human history, because as never before, we're able to look at the world as a whole and understand how things work in a way that never was before possible. Not when I was a child, not when my father was a child, not at any time before in history have we had the capacity to understand what we now can see. The second thing is how fast things have changed, that the world, the natural world, the ocean, is in trouble, and therefore we're in trouble. Our dependence on the natural systems, that is one of the things that we now are beginning to understand, that we did not see until right about now. It's been a gradual process to connect the dots, to see how our lives, our fortunes, our health, our security, everything links back to what we're doing to the natural world. And the third thing, amidst all of the issues that we now face with poverty, with wars, with the destruction of the natural systems, global warming, climate change, CO2 in the atmosphere, the acidification of the ocean, the collapse of the wildlife in the sea, all of these problems, plenty of reasons for people to feel despair. But the third thing I want to convey really focuses on reasons for hope, what we can do on our watch, during our time, while there is still time. Why? That first thing that I mentioned, that this is the most important time ever, is that this may be the last best time for us to save what remains of the natural world and restore what we can while the elements are still there that will secure for us an enduring future. So I tell children, that they should rejoice that they have come along at this most exciting time. And to the rest of us who are a little older, more than a few years, that we too should rejoice that we have an opportunity as no one in previous times could, because we know what no one in previous times could know. So, if you have one of those magic time machines available to you, and you could choose a time, any time in the past or any time in the future, if you want to make a difference, choose now. Choose now. We still have forests that are in the same kind of condition that they were thousands of years ago. There's still remnants there that we can draw upon for inspiration and as sources of knowledge, and the means to perhaps restore and replenish some that have been lost. In the ocean, we still have 10% of the sharks. That means 90% are gone. There's still 90%, not 90%, there's still 10% of the tunas, the swordfish, the groupers, the mero, and other fish that we have greatly depleted, but they're not all gone. If we continue as we have during times past, this same trend, by the middle of this century, those large creatures that we now extract from the sea will be at a level where their future can be in serious doubt, and with that, our future in serious doubt. The good news is the knowledge that has accumulated over time and the acceleration of not just acquiring knowledge, but disseminating it. The first video clip that I want to share with you is really about new tools that we have that I think provide hope. This ability for any child, any CEO, any head of state, any mom, any dad, anyone on a laptop or a desktop or an iPhone or an iPad, you can hold the world in your hands with what we're calling Google Earth. And now the ocean in Google Earth exists. And I want to take you on a little tour, if I may. We'll see if this works. And we'll go look at some places around the world that, if we can, at this point in time, embrace them, protect them, not let them be subjected to the kind of damage that has happened in so many other places on the land and in the sea. Thank you. There is reason for hope. This is the coolest thing, to be able to just fly around. You can do this. You can make your own tour of places such as the Galapagos Islands and dive in. I used to dream of going to the Galapagos, and I have succeeded in actually going there many times now, but if you've never been, you can at least go vicariously or there to Baja California and dive beneath the surface and see who lives there with these little clips that appear on the surface of Google Earth. Touch those little dots and dive in. See what the squids look like that look back at you if you're actually in the water with them. Intelligent creatures with eyes that are hauntingly like our own eyes in terms of structure and what they see. Or let's take a little trip and fly over to another part of the world. Dive in, something that you could not do 5 years ago on Google Earth. You couldn't go, as you are right now, to Belize to look at fish spawning, or pick up in an instant and go to another part of the planet to the Sargasso Sea, to the waters off Bermuda, where floating golden forests of sargassum harbor unique creatures. Or how about south, a little bit actually west of India, in the Indian Ocean, the Chagos Archipelago, a place that just this year the United Kingdom has established as a protected area that is 500,000 square kilometers of ocean. Or to the Coral Triangle out in the Pacific, a place that really should be protected. The diversity of life there is compared to the diversity that you see in rainforests here in your country. Places where there are more kinds of fish, more kinds of coral, more kinds of echinoderms, those starfish and their relatives, than in any other known parts of the planet. Of course, there's a lot that we have yet to know. Maybe we'll find some places off Brazil that rival the Coral Triangle. We don't know yet. Good reason to explore. Or how about a place that is so little known? Both poles, the Arctic and the Antarctic. Here, the Ross Sea. We know how to extract things from the Ross Sea and other parts of the Southern Ocean, where creatures known as Patagonian toothfish, otherwise called Chilean sea bass, are being exploited to a tremendous extent. The Arctic is just beginning to be opened owing to the melting ice, new shipping lanes. Now we're beginning to understand what's under the ice. We're beginning to see the world with new eyes, and that's exciting. I think it's one of the most exciting things that's happened in my lifetime, that we're actually able to travel the world vicariously and maybe be inspired to do whatever it takes to go there in person, whether it's to another country or to the bottom of the ocean. My mother actually waited until she was 81 before putting on a mask and fins and diving into the sea. And she scolded me and said, "Why didn't you get me into the ocean sooner?" I thought I had tried, but she says, if you are 81, don't wait any longer. Go see what it's like in the blue part of the planet. And of course, if you are 81, hurry. But whatever time you have remaining, make it a part of your life. And if you don't like to get wet, then somehow manage to get a submarine. I wanted a submarine so badly that I started a company to build submarines. I'm a biologist. I don't know anything about starting a company, but I did it anyway, teaming up with engineers, inspired by a colleague I never got to meet, but because I read his books, I felt a kindred spirit. Now, the former speaker here, Jean-Michel Cousteau, is also a kindred spirit, and I do know him personally. And he'll tell you the same thing. Don't let life slip by without somehow doing what it takes to go explore our blue backyard. Get acquainted with the fish, and there must be a way that you can figure out to at least glimpse. If you can't get to the ocean, then lakes, rivers, and streams are a good starting place. All of it matters. It's all water. It's all filled with life of one sort or another. So I want to take you now to another place. Let's see if I can do this. To a place that you can find on Google Earth. This is out in the Sargasso Sea, and the reason I'm choosing this place is because it will take you back to the 1930s, when William Beebe and his engineering colleague, Otis Barton, for the first time glimpsed what life was like a half a mile, 1,000 meters beneath the surface. The first ones to see what it's like beyond the reach of sunlight. But there is light. You'll see the flash, the sparkle, the glow of living creatures that make their own light and that Beebe and Barton were able to report on. In this little video clip, you'll see an image of them at that time. Intensely blue, the waters around Bermuda are warmed by the Gulf Stream, one of the world's largest and swiftest ocean currents. Humpback whales pass through these waters each year, migrating from polar feeding grounds. These waters are also known to legions of luminous deep-sea creatures and intrepid undersea explorers. In the 1930s, zoologist William Beebe and engineer Otis Barton descended 1,000 meters into the depths around Bermuda for a first view of life in a place the sunlight never reaches. Beebe compared what he saw to naked space itself, out far beyond atmosphere, between the stars, where the blackness of space, the shining planets, comets, suns, and stars must really be closely akin to the world of life as it appears to the eyes of an old human being in the open ocean, 1/2 mile down. For Beebe and Barton, the comets, suns, and stars were living creatures reflecting rainbows of iridescence, or flashing, sparkling, and glowing with their own living light. Fireflies and glowworms are famous light makers on the land, but in the deep sea, about 90% of the creatures, jellies, fish, bacteria, shrimp, squids, and many others, have some form of bioluminescence to signal one another. Scientists say these bursts of starry light may be the most common form of communication on the planet. In the open sea, jellies are also among the most abundant forms of life. The Gulf Stream current can carry these oddly beautiful drifters along at about 160 kilometers a day. Buffered by the Gulf Stream is a magically quiet, gently rotating mass of sargassum weed that expands over more than 5 million square kilometers of open waters. Isolated by walls of fast-moving currents between Bermuda and Puerto Rico, the Sargasso Sea holds a liquid jungle of creatures which have evolved over the ages to exist in floating forests of golden brown sargassum. Within its leafy, sunlit masses are camouflaged such creatures as loggerhead turtles, filefish, sea hares, and the speckled brown sargasso crab. For scientists, it's a living laboratory, strategically located in the open sea. For creatures that live in the undersea caves, among the reefs, and in the great depths below, Bermuda is simply home. So beyond 200 miles from the coast of Bermuda, like beyond 200 miles from the coast of Brazil, you are in the high seas. That's where most of the Sargasso Sea actually is. 64% of the ocean is beyond national jurisdiction. It's the Wild West. At present, there is little governance about what you can do or not do in the blue heart of the ocean. This necessarily will change in the next few years. It must, because presently 11 nations are disproportionately extracting fish and other wildlife from these waters. Who owns the high seas? Everybody, nobody, but a few countries are taking, and it's harming, or extracting, if you will, from the ocean that benefits, whether we own it or not. It benefits us, and we need to care for it in ways that we did not have to think about when I was a child, because we couldn't get to the high seas. We did not have the technology to take nets deep in the ocean or to market wildlife captured on one side of the planet and the next day for it to be in a market on the other side of the planet. Good news and bad news about technology. The best news is now we know. Now we know what we couldn't know before we had the capacity to do what we now can do. So let's do this and go. At the southeastern edge of South America, Patagonia is a place of spectacular mountains and sweeping plains. The vast Patagonian coast extends far out into the South Atlantic Ocean, an enormous shelf battered by a cold northbound current and bathed by some of the richest, most productive waters in the world. It is here, on Peninsula Valdez, that a single pod of orcas, about a dozen individuals, has developed a unique way of dining. Risking all, they lunge from cresting waves right up onto the beach, clamp their great jaws around a young elephant seal or sea lion. Then, in a desperate maneuver to avoid beaching, spin to ride a wave back into the sea. Enough sea lions and elephant seals survive to populate huge colonies that stretch from the edge of the peninsula all the way south to Tierra del Fuego. They gather in harems with up to 100 females, guarded by a single, robust, and very busy male, who spends a lot of time defending his claim. Massive colonies of marine birds also prosper here, notably the black-browed albatross, with its 4-meter wingspan, and the charismatic Magellanic penguin. Like many seabirds, these penguins spend much of their time at sea, scooping up the food they need to power migrations over vast stretches of the ocean. One of the oldest groups of birds, penguins can dive deeper than any other kind of bird. They look as though they're flying underwater with fast strokes of their short, muscular wings. Here, too, southern right whales gather in large numbers every year to mate and return to the same waters a year later to give birth to their very large offspring. Patagonia is a magical place, but it is currently at risk from the combined pressures of rapidly increasing tourism, pollution, and overfishing. One fish particularly targeted has been the Patagonian toothfish, known in restaurants and supermarkets as Chilean sea bass. So many Patagonian toothfish have been captured to supply a growing global demand that their future is now in doubt. Overfishing is also depleting food sources for the many birds, whales, and other animals that require small fish and squid for food. There is hope that a move by the Argentine government to protect hundreds of kilometers of the Patagonian coastal zone will provide an enduring future for Patagonia's unique living systems. There's also hope because the Brazilian government has protected a part of the coastline where those same right whales come to mate and give birth. It's an idea that seems to be catching on, and I consider it to be great good news. But only a fraction of 1% of the ocean has any kind of protection. Good news is things are beginning to change, just as early in the 20th century, moves began to protect the land. Now we know that the ocean, too, is vulnerable to our actions, something that we could not imagine when I was a child, that the ocean could be influenced by what we put into it or what we take out of it. But now we know. Now we know that the ocean is in trouble, and so, therefore, are we. It seems, here's this speck, this blue speck in the universe that has provided for us everything that we need. We sometimes look skyward and imagine that we could go set up housekeeping on the moon or Mars, or travel on a spacecraft to go far beyond our own solar system. And maybe someday, if we make peace with this part of the universe, we will have that capacity. But first, things first. Taking care of this part of the solar system, exploring this part of the solar system, even mapping it with the same degree of care that we have accorded to the moon, Mars, and Jupiter. There are better maps of those places than there are of this planet. The land is pretty well mapped, but the ocean, we're just beginning to have the capacity to penetrate the water with technologies that enable us to see and know what's beneath the surface. We have a long way to go, considering that only 5% has been mapped or explored with the same degree of detail that we have for any part of the land.
Você acompanhou a primeira parte da conferência Mares Sustentáveis, a Visão e a Realidade, com Sylvia Earle. Obrigado pela sua companhia e até quarta que vem, quando você acompanha a segunda parte desta conferência, no próximo Fronteiras do Pensamento.